Hello, thank you for joining us for today's video premiere by Asheville-based electronic composer Kimathi Moore. I'm Jeff Arnell, the Executive Director of Black Mountain College Museum and Art Center, and this program is part of our Museum from Home initiative. This is an online platform that we started earlier this year that includes digital exhibitions, conversations, podcasts, lectures, and performances. Museum from Home has allowed us to not only stay connected with our local community, but also stay connected with friends around the country and friends around the world. Thank you to everyone who has supported our work during these difficult times. Your generosity has allowed us to keep all of these online programs free of charge. If you're in a position to help, please consider making a donation today or becoming a museum member today. Visit us at blackmountaincollege.org for more information. We are so excited to have Kimathi Moore with us today and excited to share his new video premiere of Oliver's Tale, We the Fish. This is a piece that attempts to illustrate a town underwater, inspired by the Polish surrealist painter Jacek Yerka. Kimathi Moore was born in Paris, France, to a family of writers and teachers, and Kima's inclination to understand music and experiment with sound and texture has been constant. Kima ended up learning percussion professionally and has since returned to his primary love, electronics, computer technology, field recordings, and found sound manipulation. A big thanks to Kima for sharing this work with us today. Please stick around for a conversation after the video, and I would encourage everyone to search out Kima online to his Bandcamp page and other sources. Thank you again, and we hope to see you in our museum soon. Here's Kimathi Moore's Oliver's Tale, We the Fish. Hi, Kima.
Hey Jeff, how's it going?
Great. That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for being
Thank you,
here with us.
thank you so much. My immense pleasure. Thanks to the Black Alice and you for doing such incredible work with the Black Mountain College Museum. Fantastic. So thank you so much. I feel really honored.
Great. We feel exactly the same, and you have been a big part of our life and with the rehappenings and many programs, and a big part of the community here in Asheville. And we are sending our love right back
Thank you so
at
much.
you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So, can you set this up? What did we just hear in Oliver's tale, "We the Fish"?
Um, it was I as you know, I a lot of the pieces, these types of pieces that I do, which are kind of a branch off of drone and ambient music, which is more based on collage. And this was an idea that I got from a collaborator of mine, Elizabeth Lang, and Elisa Ferris. Those were two individuals that kind of inspired me to go in that direction. This piece is very, it's directly tied into Yerka's paintings. And one of his, several of his paintings, but mostly the one where I saw, you see these fish, giant fish, metallic fish swimming, and then above a city, above a sort of a town with a minaret, a church, a minaret church, I think, with a bell, and just a very kind of like a traditional, like with a traditional country landscape. So I came up with the idea to do maybe a piece that had more of an underwater feel. And it's a piece I started about 5 years ago.
Wow. That's so we're going to set the 5 years aside. I really want to ask about a couple of things. This idea of translating visual art into sound, or, you know, this, even these kind of surrealistic ideas. When you're working with this, what is part of the research or your compositional process within that? I mean, it takes 5 years, so you have some time to explore and probably experiment.
Yeah, well, it's also because I'm terribly slow. There's also that factor to factor in. But even on my best days when I'm faster, it still takes a long time. What happens is I'll take from a painting the major elements that draw me into the painting, and I'll try to see if I can have sounds that can at least evoke the feeling of the painting. And then once I am able to hone in on that, which can take some time. I have to listen to the pieces a lot. Then I might start using some of the elements in the painting and directly reference those elements in the paintings. Like, for example, here you have underwater sounds, and I might just get underwater sounds. If there's like in the case of this painting, there is a church, sort of a minaret church, if I'm saying it correctly. And so I actually ended up getting some church bell sounds. Mm-hmm. So, but the most important for me is to evoke the painting, how it feels. That's the first step. Once I get that down, then I can start focusing on getting the sounds, and then even doing some sound design to be able to reference some of the different objects in the painting.
Yeah, and you know,
it's crazy.
So your background as a percussionist,
right?
And how do those kind of worlds align for you? Because, you know, percussion and timbre is so important to percussion, and
very true.
And I hear a lot of that in your music, and the kind of field recordings mixed with synthesized sound. But I think a lot of that I also kind of almost falls in a percussion family of sorts, or those sound worlds. And I wonder if your background, if you could just talk a little bit about starting as a percussionist and working now with field recordings and also synthesized sound.
Well, interesting. And if I were to go back a little bit back before, throughout my teenage years and even my childhood, I was so intrigued by artists like Archie Shepp, mm-hmm. or Coltrane, and then later on Pharoah Sanders and Alice Coltrane, and I would hear these incredible sounds coming from those records. And then living in West Africa and living there in Dakar, Senegal for 6 years, and then moving back to Paris, that had a profound, tremendous effect on how, I guess, I heard music. It just kind of made, I just started hearing things in my head that were just, that I always kept wanting to find in music, and I would find only bits and pieces. And which kind of interestingly enough in the 90s led me to doing what I call abstract hip hop. And I would make abstract hip hop, and I started sampling people like Alice Coltrane or Pharoah Sanders, and directly using samples, odd samples, which at the time was very unusual, very, very unusual. And that led me to finally not doing rhythm-based pieces as much, and going fully into ambient and into drone music. And from that point, I would say simultaneously, I also began learning percussion around the late 1990s. And so, of course, when I started playing percussion, I was more interested in going into a hardware store and getting sheetrock or pieces of metal and pots and pans. I had seen other percussionists like Nana Vasconcelos, the Brazilian percussionist who's now passed, and others like Colin Walcott, who used to play with Paul Winter, the Paul Winter consort, play tabla, but also use all kinds of gongs and all types of different, these odd percussion instruments, and that was very intriguing to me. So, so in my mind, it was interesting for me to. I think percussion had this element of always creating this naturalistic feel to music, bringing an outside element into the music, and breaking up a little bit the feeling of always being in the studio.
Mm-hmm. So when you were listening to those Archie Shepp and Pharoah Sanders records, you were not playing drums at that time?
No, actually, I started on a drum machine.
Oh, wow.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And so, and I think, so that world of kind of probably fixed patterns and rhythms.
Right.
And then what I do also hear in your work, or your current work, and in the piece that we just heard, is something that is so organic. And it does, and you're saying, you're describing it as drone or ambient, but
right.
It does have, it almost has that kind of early tape music, magnetic tape music kind of feel to it,
Absolutely.
Where there is, you recognize some sounds, but some of the other parts seem synthesized.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so, but the mechanics of the machine and the body, your body, as the composer, and how do you balance that out as far as process and maybe what you're hearing out in the world?
When and the way I refer to what I do is, especially I do a traditional form of drone music, which is a straightforward with like straight tones, but I call this cut up drone. I tend to refer to it as cut up drone. I don't know if it's accurate, or collage drone. I think the process. I think what it is I try to replicate a little bit the way I hear the world sometimes, almost not muted, but with a gentle filter on it. And because computerized music can be very highly digitized, and it can sound that way, which has its place. But I think for this type of music, I feel like you have to sort of temper that with a more organic sense and a more organic feeling. And even though, and probably more so for me because I do a lot of sound design, but I think Liz was a good teacher for me in that sense. She always emphasized for my sound design to be extremely, extremely organic, and if possible, to alive, to bring that component where a sound feels real, like it could be something in a three-dimensional space and time and have its own reality.
Mm-hmm. Which kind of goes right back to Yerka's paintings.
Exactly.
Where there is this kind of it's like the unconscious mind of
Of course,
sorts. And
of course.
then you're, um, not exactly. I mean, I hear the translation, but I also it's almost like a second version of it.
Yes, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, but if you look at it while you're listening to it, and I want to go back to that research idea. So do you study these paintings and
I
then,
do.
yeah,
I look at them, and um, one of the things which is great, because I think the reason why I think Yerka speaks to me so much as opposed to someone like let's say another magic realist painter, and Remedios Varo from the 50s, 40s. She and Leonora Carrington were fantastic, magic realists and symbolists at the same time. But the thing that I relate to most with Yerka, as opposed to a lot of surrealism, is that he references his countryside, and we are surrounded by countryside here. And I think for me, it's I'm surrounded by friends that have wood stoves, barnyards, just landscapes with hills, and the chimneys, smell is a smell of barbecue, or the smell of the chimney smoke. To be able to reference that and mix it with a sense of magic realism, it was really, really true for me. It's almost as if it was, for me, I can say it was. I could say, yeah, it was. It was like saying, yes, you can incorporate all of this into sound design. You can, in fact, it should be a part. People should feel like they're inside a landscape or an environment which is absolutely natural, very realistic, very natural, where they can even, it's almost as if they were in the mountains there with us.
yeah. That's. I would love to hear more about how long have you been in Asheville?
I would say I moved here in 2001, so I would say 19 years.
Wow, that's a good bit of time to be in
Yeah,
these mountains.
I know.
And
I'm very influenced by them all the time. All the
yeah,
time. Yeah.
and I would love to also hear about what that's like, because do you actively make field recordings, or do you just okay.
I do. I do. I go, my favorite places to go to are, of course, the train tracks. I like to go into people's kitchens
Mm,
with wood stoves. I have a fellow collaborator whom you know quite well, Julie Gillum.
yeah.
I go to her house frequently. There's a donkey at a distance that I try to record whenever I can. She has a wood stove, so I'm always recording her wood stove. I'm always trying to record sounds that are part of our environment, the natural environment, not necessarily in Asheville, but around Asheville or out in the countryside. So yeah, I do purposefully all the time, whenever I can, carry a microphone, and I'm always recording.
That's so wonderful. And I think
Yeah,
that um, because we're seeing, we're listening,
right,
but are we really hearing what's around? And I think that with a recorder, and you kind of zeroing in on um, an animal sound, or a
absolutely,
train, it becomes something else. And I think so that kind of goes also back to this idea of composition, and maybe
right.
in the just this kind of I would love to know, how do you map things out? I mean, do you use a score or notation, or once you start working on this piece, like you said, that over several years it might take, how do you kind of keep track of it, and
Yeah,
to play it again, or to change it, or revise it?
I try to use a more like the way a painter would approach a painting,
Mhm.
and or I try to use a technique that in literature that people might use, how they write a book. So that's why it's almost interesting. It's almost like I'm using techniques that are not normal, and I guess normal, traditional, in how you make music, how you get together and you feel inspired. You get let's say you get an idea and you go with the idea, and within a month the piece is finished. Here in this case, it's almost like I'm going every little step of the way. Let's say I work on 30 seconds. Let's say 30 seconds. Then I'll put on my headphones and listen to the piece. I'll walk outside and see how the piece relates to the world, and I'll listen to that. I'll just listen to the loop of that for about 10 minutes, 20 minutes, over 50, 60 times before I even make a decision to go to the next step. So it's kind of like you're building a story with sound, but it's not necessarily a story that tells a traditional story. It's like almost like an internal narrative. It's bizarre, but I guess it's the best way I can describe it.
And some of this work, a couple things come to mind, because it does seem kind of dreamlike, where sometimes narratives start, in the middle and
it's very true.
End in the beginning or whatever. And sometimes these different ways of thinking about structure or lend itself to more experimental kind of instead of just straight linear narratives. Something else that I'm curious about is when you perform this piece live. You just performed it live. What are the fixed points, and what is there real-time decisions or improvisation within, say, each kind of performance of the piece? That
is always very hard to do because I spend so much time, crafting. So it's almost it's almost kind of like I guess you have to tear down the piece again. So part of my heart and soul is like, no, I don't want to touch the piece. Because I feel like when a piece is done, there's nothing I can add. I can do an alternate version of it, which I do. I do oftentimes, like in paintings, you have series 1, painting 1. I've started doing a lot of series, like volume 1, volume 2, volume 3 of the same song. But it's very hard to break it down and then to make it live because I do it because I think it's more for the audience sake. For my sake, I would just leave it as it is. But I try to at least break it up to where I can perform it live and make it somewhat interesting for people, hopefully. And since I have a percussionist background, so of course, I was trained in improvisational music. So yes, I can definitely improvise within the piece. But the only issue that I have with that is I think sometimes when I bring something to the piece which is improvisational, it ends up, it ends up bringing the piece down a couple notches. I know for a lot of people, I think it's the opposite. When they see someone perform live, they have a closer relationship with the piece. And for me, it's interesting. It's almost the opposite effect. When I improvise over a piece, I feel like the piece is being taken down a couple notches. So I have to be really, really careful of what I do, what I say within the piece.
Mm-hmm. So would you say kind of a definitive version of a piece is a record or, a file? Once it's done, it's done.
I can go back to it. I might go back to it. Usually what ends up happening is I do another version of it, a version number 2. Like in one piece, I might take the piece forward. Well, in the next version, I might just take a couple passages of it and then make it go backwards, and then work that, and that becomes an alternate. So let's say this one is called Oliver's Tale. I might call this the next piece Olivier, and then it might turn into the kitchen, Olivier's kitchen, and then it might turn into Olivier's armpit, armpit number 1, armpit number 2, it just kind of goes and goes. It just one door opens, but I rarely go back and change a piece. Once it's done, it's done.
Yeah. And so the piece that we just heard is this, which version is this?
This one is the first version. The first version. I do intend on creating. I always do another like a prologue or a epilogue kind of piece. I might do. I mean, I was just kind of. I was just just haphazardly talking about doing another version, but I might. I mean, I might do another version, or maybe a small series. I did do that for a lot of other pieces. One is Everlasting Castle, so I did an alternate version which is called Everlasting Salcedo, because it has a little bit of a rhythm, and it shakes. It has this kind of movement from side to side, so I call it Everlasting Salcedo. And then I'm even thinking about doing another third version of Everlasting Castle, which is something completely, totally an off, like an alternate version of Everlasting Salcedo. But I don't know what that's gonna look like.
Right, right, right. And well, I think that it's brilliant, and so thank you so much
Oh, thank you,
um,
thank you.
for sharing it with us. And I guess one of my last questions, and I think that it might be, um, as you're walking around, or what is bringing joy to you these days?
It's interesting because I went through a really dark period in my life, and most of my friends know, dealing with in year 2000, and it had to deal with depression and and aspects of that, and not to put something so private out, but healing from that left me with what I call a positive residue, an open door into memories of my childhood that that are became have become since extremely vivid memories of my childhood, and almost it's almost as if I'm walking down the street and all of a sudden I see the sun, or a sun ray hitting a branch in a particular way, and I get a very strong feeling. It's almost like smelling an aroma, and I get it's almost like I go back in time to that place when I was 5 years old or 6 years old. I mean, such a strong feeling and it comes like a whiff. It's like a whiff. And I used to think it was more like more synesthesia, but as I'm discovering more and more about these sudden strange feelings of vivid feelings of childhood, I wonder. I think it's maybe just a byproduct of going through what I went through in year 2000, 2001, and which has now evolved on its own, and which now I use in my music. So when I walk, I just sometimes I'll just I'll see the world as it is normally, and then all of a sudden I'll get a whiff, a smell, and just for a second, there's split like 10 seconds, the world just becomes extremely very vibrant, and it has meaning. It carries a meaning in itself, and then it'll fade away, and I'm like, oh well, that's awesome. I need to put that in the piece, that
That
feeling.
is so beautiful. And
It's
so you're able to put that in your work.
I think I kind of lace that inside the work. I don't talk about it often, but yes, I do. I lace it in the work. I make sure it's in the work. And it's interesting because when I finish a piece, I'll walk around and listen to the piece many times and see if those feelings are also there. Or I'll fall asleep to it. If I can fall asleep, that's another thing, is if I can fall asleep to the piece, that's a good sign.
Well, that's a test. That's the bar. Kima's
Yeah.
bar is.
Pretty
um,
much. If I
yeah,
can fall asleep, that's a great sign. All these pieces have to be, even though they have a lot going on. I try to make sure that they always, if somebody fell asleep on the piece, that would be an honor for me. So that's a
wow.
very, yeah, yeah,
Well, we should leave it there, and I hope
yeah.
that we all sleep well tonight after listening to this music, and it will be available, in the future. So maybe we could all that could be a project for all of us to do together, is sleep a little bit better.
Right. Absolutely, absolutely. You know, and I just want to thank all my my musical heroes in town. Also, to like from Elizabeth Lang, Elisa Ferris, Ivan Seng, Meg Mulhern, and her partner David James Lynch, Ross Gentry, Christopher Ballard, Jamie Hepler. I mean, I have so many musical heroes in town that have all, each in their own particular way, have always all influenced me. River Gargarian, and the list goes on of how many people have influenced me too. So that also plays a big part in my music as well.
And
Yeah.
I could feel it, and everyone that you just listed, and all the folks that you didn't list it. I mean, we were so lucky to have such a city that's alive with energy and ideas and
Absolutely.
and sound, and adventurous sound too. And I think that we're really fortunate in that way.
I know, and dancers like Julie Gillum, Sara Baird, Lynx, the multimedia artist, Chandra Shukla. I mean, so
I know,
yeah,
and
all those people.
That's a part two of the conversation, because I would love, you do so much work with other disciplines, and I think that also kind of, I'm sure, connects into your process and in your practice.
Absolutely. I remember the first rehappening. I worked with Claire Elizabeth Barrett, and that was a wonderful, perhaps one of my favorite, all-time favorite performances, because we performed it. It took 4 hours to perform, and I remember she was the one that convinced me to perform it for 4 hours, and I was very hesitant. And she said, she kept telling me to trust her, that she knew she had an idea, and it was one of the best performances I've ever experienced. And I went into that zone that where I could hear everything that was happening. I could see everything she was doing, and it was one of those fantastic moments I'll never forget. So yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful. And I hope that with the world as we move forward, that we'll have a rehappening in 2021, because we had to cancel this year.
I know, unfortunately.
Postponed, yeah. But it's an event that we all love as well. And so we'll look for that in the future.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you again, Kima. And and we really are so happy that you were able to make this music for us and spend this time with us.
Absolutely. Well, I hope some people were able to fall asleep. Perhaps not while cooking or something like that, but
or driving.
Or driving. Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. We don't want that.
That's right. Well, thanks again, Kima. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jeff, and thanks to Alice as well.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.